Hello and welcome to another episode of Fulham Chronicles. Hello, Melinda.
Hello, Zara. So here we are in year 2. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. It feels like yesterday when we were planning everything, putting all of the dots together, and look at us.
I know.
Aren't we proud?
Yes, definitely.
Who do we have today in the studio? Yeah, we keep forgetting to like a little tap on our backs. But yeah, well done us. Well done us. We need a round of applause, Voxpod. Yes, who do we have today in the studio?
So today we have Gauri Nafrey. So Gauri is a Fulham resident.
Welcome.
And also the director of Bridge Baker, with now 2 locations in Fulham.
Correct.
That was the most amazing and raw, face that came with the titles that you could have ever, seen. But we are very proud and very lucky to have an authentic, born and bred in Fulham.
Yes.
With the best bread that has ever existed. And I can say that as a client and making others clients.
Absolutely.
And also the best croissants and the best cakes and the best everything. No, I do really believe you guys are doing an amazing job. But let's start with Melinda's favorite, the beginning. Who is Gauri? Because people buy from people.
Correct. Yes and no. I'd like to believe that people buy from people, but hopefully they're buying from Bridge Baker, not from me, because I don't actually make any of the stuff anymore. But who am I? I am a Fulham resident to start with. But,
how long have you been calling Fulham home for?
So we were away from the UK for about 10 years and we've been back for 9 years in Singapore.
Wow.
And so prior to that, we did live in London, but that was in North London. So now we are completely converted to being South Londoners or West Londoners. And Fulham is home, has been home for about 9 years now. So my background is finance and banking, which I've done for very, very long. But I've always loved to bake and to cook.
I love how you say for very long. You look so young.
You don't want to know.
No,
you don't want to know.
No, if people ask what's the secret, go to Bridge Baker.
Yes, exactly. Eat all the croissants and the bread and that's what happens.
It's called carbs.
Exactly. So that's my background. I've always loved to cook and bake.
How did you get into, because we all know this, both me and Melinda love that, the fact that people do follow their dreams, which is actually happened with you. But how did you get into cooking? Is it tradition? Is it family? Is it? I would only assume, because I think you're amazing cook.
So, to be honest, yes, it runs in the family. So my grandmother was an amazing cook. She was a doctor, the first woman doctor to go to medical school in this very famous medical school in India. So she was very proud of her career, but she was the most amazing hostess and cook. My mother was an amazing cook. So I love to cook, but I actually love to bake more than cooking. And I had to kind of be nudged towards sort of cooking normal food, because my mum was like, you can't just keep baking cakes and cookies
funny
for all your life.
It goes that way though, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like, I think I'm more into cooking and not so good at baking. And my sisters, one of them is the other way around.
Yeah. And obviously you realize as you get older, you need to be able to cook normal food. So I've always cooked.
Why? What's wrong with cake for breakfast?
Exactly.
Your children might be, the luckiest
I'm
in
not
the world.
complaining, exactly.
William Wonka wouldn't ever do anything savoury.
Absolutely. But, I also like to believe that if you have a passion, converting it into a business is not necessarily the best idea. And I don't think the reason for our success is my passion for baking. I think it's contributed, definitely. It's very important, because I do know everything that we do. A lot of the recipes are mine. If things are not going all right, I can figure out what's wrong with it. I can fix things. But I think having a head for business is almost more important. So I guess having a background in finance and banking has really helped, managing teams, doing deals, whatever it is. You just learn how to multitask and how to be a good manager. And I think that's really important. Having that attention to detail is very important. So going back to that point, I think I love my cooking and baking, and it's come from the family, but ultimately it's combining with some business skills that makes things happen.
And that's how you met your husband, was it?
Well, we were in business school together.
Yeah.
And he and I ended up both in finance for very long. And I quit finance primarily because this is going back to the early sort of mid 2000s, where I had both my children, and it was very difficult to carry on. I did actually go back to work, but this is pre work-life balance, is pre equality and stuff like that. I was asked to come back to work full time with 2 kids under the age of 2, with no flexibility whatsoever. So it was very, very difficult. And yeah, we don't want to talk about that, but it was the moment for me to decide that why am I doing this? You know, if I'm never seeing my children, I'm paying a fortune for childcare. We had to have 2 people at home, one full-time, one part-time, because the kids were so little. And you realize you get nothing in your hand. You're literally paying away all your salary to childcare. And that's when I decided to quit banking, which I did. And my first foray into sort of baking or in that space was in Singapore, where I started my first business. I chanced upon this baker who I partnered with, and we opened our first business there, which actually has become very successful since. I did sell my stake before I moved back, and that gave me the capital to invest in Fulham. To be honest, when I moved to Fulham and when we moved back to London, I decided I'm never going to open a bakery ever again. And my husband made me write down all the notes for myself that, you know, why am I not going to do this? Because he knew that there might be a part 2 of this. And I wrote down that if I ever do this, I will never do it alone. That's the first rule, which I've already broken. Because I discovered that nobody else is as mad and wanted to do the same thing. And I looked around, I thought of going back to banking. I looked at several job options going, you know, there was this working women's programs and stuff to go back to banking. But it's just the idea of getting back in a business suit and getting onto a train and going to work and reporting to somebody else that I may not necessarily like, it just put me off. So yeah.
You were like, no, been there, done that.
Right. So what happened first? Did it happen that you have found the lovely corner store to move in Fulham, or it happened that the corner found you and you...
A bit of both. So as you can imagine, coming back to London, having never done anything in the space ever before, I had 0 contacts. Everybody that I knew in food or food related was all in Singapore, right? So trying to find bakers, or it was very difficult. Literally, I went around telling everybody that I would meet, I want to open a bakery, and they would all look at me like, are you nuts, right? And then eventually somebody somewhere said, oh, actually, I know somebody who actually knows a baker. And that's how I kind of got off the ground. And then slowly but surely, I kind of built a small network of people that I got to know. I put on my LinkedIn that I was looking for a baker. And I found somebody who was interested in working as a head baker. And I had nothing at this point, right? Obviously, I'm looking for a site. Before the one-on-ones with Bridge Road, there were a few others in Fulham that came up, but we needed a lot of space. For the baking especially. So when this one
Am I right to say that where the kitchen is now was a garage?
Correct. And funnily enough, when that property came on the market, they didn't actually put the garage on it. They just said this is a property, and the garage wasn't mentioned. But I knew there was a garage because I used to...
How weird as well, because everything's about square foot nowadays.
Exactly, and they didn't mention it because the agents who were there before weren't using it. And because I used to go for a walk when I had time in those days to go for a walk, I remember thinking, but there is space behind. What are they doing with that? And then it took a long time to actually secure that property because the agents who were there wanted to, sublease it, and they changed their minds, and they changed their minds again. And I actually wrote to the landlord directly a letter, a handwritten letter, saying this is who I am.
Isn't that the best way?
Yeah,
Melinda's favorite.
Exactly. This is who I am, and these agents are messing around with me. If you decide to, give me the lease, these are my details. I wrote to him in August, never heard back. He rang me on my birthday, believe it or not, in October.
Wow.
It was just a coincidence. And he said, I'm an old
wouldn't
man.
call it that way.
Yeah, and he said, I'm an old man and I'm not going to have very long to live. Actually, he passed away 3 months later. Come and meet me in Kent. So I drove to Kent the next day to meet him. And that's how we got the lease.
Wow! So you just drove to Kent, had a chat with him,
and it took much longer because he actually unfortunately passed away during the course of the paperwork, which meant that it went into his estate and everything took much longer. But in the end, it all worked out, as you all know. And a lot of my friends who live in Fulham said, "Why are you going to Wandsworth Bridge Road? It's not nice." Right? You're much better off be on King's Road, on Fulham Road, but somehow, I don't know, my gut was like, let's just do this.
Do
you know what? I remember we just moved around the area when you've opened. And you remember I came to you and I told you.
I think in the first few months, in fact, you and Callum came.
You know, I was looking for a baker to provide all of the goods, and I've never looked back ever since we worked together.
I remember the table you guys were sitting on.
I remember the day I met you, and I think it was great how you were so open. I found out your what you've shared, the life story, how
Yeah.
you've been, you came, you conquered, and you said to me then, it's not going to be easy, and I remember even now, like, well, I've just signed my lease, I am, I've got a baker,
Yeah.
but the baker is telling me it's not easy. So for me, it was, one of those moments of, all right, she's going to do well, just because I always believe authenticity and being true to yourself and just telling people how it is like, it's not amazing, it's not great, but we are doing what we've started to do from day one, and we're not changing who we are. And I think that's what, originality again and authenticity wins. Plus, you never changed your
Our
track.
offering, no. Yeah.
What did your husband? Sorry to interrupt. What did your husband have to say after you'd written all those things down on a piece
Must
of paper?
we know?
Did
Yeah,
he? Was he?
He was. I mean, to be fair,
He just
I
knows
wouldn't
you
be
so
able to
well.
do this without him. He knows me very well, and I think I could not have sat at home. He knew that, and I think he knew that I was better out of the house than in the house. So this is a clear choice that had to be made. I do think my family did think, and still probably think, that I'm nuts to do what I do, because they see me working, and I'm literally working. I'm not showing off, but I'm on it 24/7. Even when I'm home on my laptop, I'm doing all my paperwork, emails, everything else. And it's being a small business, I can't afford people for invoicing, or I can't afford to have somebody doing, paperwork, admin. I'm doing a lot of that stuff myself. So it's never ending, right? And they don't think it's worth it. They don't think the effort and what we get out of it financially is worth it. But I keep telling them it's not just about money, right? So
Well, if it would have been all about money, you would have still been in finance.
yeah, exactly. It's
I
so much
think-
easier.
Yeah, exactly. I as we all know, and all small businesses do know, and you know better than anyone with 2 branches. Sometimes I think the fact that you do what you love, it pays for itself. You're going to work every day happily, and you prefer to be busy,
Yes.
to be your own boss, rather than report in
Absolutely.
front of somebody and whatever else
Yeah.
you just mentioned. Right. So we've got 2 branches.
Yes.
Let's talk a bit about them. So, have you got a favorite?
The first one will always be my
Yes,
my
there's like a
baby, right?
baby.
It's like the
Yeah.
baby,
Don't say that
right?
I've got 2 as well. You too. Talk about favorites.
That is always
That's
gonna
right.
be
You
the
have
baby.
a favorite number 1
Yeah.
and a favorite number 2.
But I must say, if I have to just hang out for a bit, I do like to go to Fulham Road, because it's much prettier, I think. Obviously, we put a bit more effort into it, because the first one, literally by the end of this whole fraud process, I was so exhausted mentally that I just did the bare minimum to make the shop look nice, because the focus was on the kitchen, on the equipment, on the kit, not so much on the on the front of house. A lot of it was just very simply done. Whereas with the second one, I had a bit more time to think about it, and it was a bigger renovation in some ways for the front of house part, because it was a shoe shop before, right?
Yes.
So I think it's much prettier as a result. So I do think it's got a nicer feel to it. But yeah, the first one, because that's where all the action's happening, right? I love the smells. I walk in there, granola is being made, and I love the smell of that lovely orange zest that we used in it. So I missed that at the other one. So yes, the first one was always going to be my favorite. Yes.
And Wandsworth Bridge Road is the hub.
Is the hub. Yes, so all the baking happens there. So the bread and the pastries are made there. But now we do make a lot of the deli stuff at the other store, because we've got a bigger
wow.
kitchen there. So we make pies, quiches, rolls there, and we kind of do a swap
But
every morning.
It's great. One thing comes in, the other one goes out.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they just,
So our drivers are pretty busy in the morning. Yeah,
yeah, they're all
Yeah.
helping, each other out.
For everyone who, obviously, I'm sure everyone in Fulham knows Bridge Baker.
One hopes.
But for people who are maybe new to the area or listening, I think would be really good to talk about sort of what the offering is, really. So everything is made from scratch. There's no nasties. And
Yes. I think the main thing that people are surprised by is that how we make a massive range of products. And actually, I have never really counted, but I did actually make an attempt to count, I think, because somebody asked me something which I had to count.
Wow.
And we make, if I include everything from our brunch offering to our pizza offering, around 250 products under our roof, which is a lot.
Wow.
From
That is
the
a lot.
scratch.
Yeah, from scratch. So it's just, if you think of the departments we've got, and the other thing that, the other metric where people are very surprised to hear is how many people do we employ, and nobody gets it right. Do you guys know how many we employ? If you had to
my
Well,
guess.
to make
gosh.
200 SKUs,
And include the front
5?
of house. 5.
No.
Across the business, how many people do we
across
employ?
the business.
30.
20.
20. Put them together, we employ 50.
50.
Wow.
52 people on
Wow.
the last
So you're a really
payroll.
good local employer.
Yes, and actually of
Oh,
the 52,
wow.
almost 40 odd would be local. To be fair, some of them are part-timers. They're not all full-timers, but still.
It doesn't matter. They're
Yeah.
on a payroll.
But the reason we do that, to answer your question, is that we we need to have this range because the costs of running a business are so high. We need to be able to offer something to everybody. We don't want a scenario where somebody walks in and says, oh, actually, I wanted a smoothie, I'm going next door. We want people to come in, have a smoothie, have a juice, get the brunch, get the bread, get the coffee, get the pastry, get the gingerbread for the kid, get the granola to take
Just
home.
a bit
And come back in the evening and have pizza.
Exactly.
Just a bit as a whole food.
And that's what makes it going, basically. Because if we just had if we were just a bread shop, for example, or just pastries, it would be almost impossible to survive with the cost structures that we operate under, right? The flip side of that is we do end up employing a lot of people. And that was the reason why I had to open the second store, because if I didn't, our fixed costs of all the staff that we employ, especially the skilled chefs and pastry chefs.
And they are not cheap.
They're not cheap, as you know.
Yeah.
We had to kind of find a way to, get that cost covered somehow. And I also felt that I needed help. I needed help from somebody who could do the operations for us. I needed help from HR. I couldn't afford anybody unless I had more revenue. So we decided to open the second store so that I could employ. Now we have a full-time operations manager. We have a part-time HR manager with all the people that are, working for us, which makes my life a little bit easier.
Yes.
So that was the main reason to open the second store.
And also, you're still a relatively young bubusiness. What's in your sixth year? I mean,
Same
as Urban Village London. Yes, I
exactly,
remember you were one of the first businesses I wrote about.
I could have said the same.
Yeah, I know.
That's all right. It's always good to come out on the other side listening to you guys.
Yeah. And then in terms of your, let's say, not necessarily your day, but an average day of Bridge Baker's life, because I always I personally find that fascinating in terms of the structure of it and what people who come in and customers probably, unless they're very friendly with you and know you well, probably don't realise what goes into that bread appearing in the morning.
That's true. And
all the other 250 products.
And so the only way we can make all these products is we literally operate 24/7. And one of the things we joke about is every year I renew the insurance for the business and they ask us if we have alarms on the property, and I say no.
We don't
because we don't need them. Because there's somebody always there.
Wow.
Except on Christmas Day. So please don't want to break it on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day,
one of your neighbours actually from Wasbrook Bridge Road has been broken into 5 or 6 times.
I know. But that's the reason why. Because our bakers, so the way we operate to make all of that happen is the bakers actually started at night. They start their shift at 11 p.m. Right? So they start at 11 p.m. They finish at 6 a.m. So when the shop opens at 7, the bread has been baked like an hour or two before then, right? And the pastry chefs arrive around 4. Then they work through the day and they do all the pastries. The regular chefs who make brunch and deli, they come at about 6. So all of this is happening in the background. And as soon as the brunch chefs leave, the pizza chefs come.
This is
so
it's
and then by the time
fascinating,
they
you know.
leave, the bakers arrive. So it's 24/7. Except on a Monday and Tuesday we don't pizza, so we shut at 7. But it's a lot of activity that goes on behind the scenes, which is why if you walk around at maybe 4 a.m, which hopefully you don't, you will be able to smell the bread at the store. Yeah.
Well, it is fascinating. It literally is like a co-op. You just have, but people don't understand that. And that's how it makes you work 24/7.
Yeah.
Because
my phone is always with me. I have all the contacts on my on my favorites. There's a call. And we've had emergencies. Somebody has rung me at 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody has hit their head and had to call the ambulance, right? And that's also why I live locally, because I could not do this if I lived somewhere else. How on earth would I leg it to one of the bakeries if there's a problem, right?
Exactly.
Have you ever thought about a number 3? You know what they say? It's such
my
a round
goodness.
number.
It's such a round number.
What is it like that thing they say
number.
about having kids? Oh,
So-
you have
Yes,
1,
that's-
2. You had 2, you had 3. It's
Yeah,
And then
fine.
you have
exactly.
twins and you've had it.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny actually because yes, I have. And not because I have, it's because one of the challenges we're facing right now, especially with salaries being what they are, the night shift is proving impossible to staff. If we lose anybody who works the night shift, we can forget about finding another replacement. So one of our senior bakers, actually our head baker, he's been with us for a long time. He's amazing, very talented guy, somebody who I know very well. He has been very keen to not do the night shift. Now, the only way we can move the bakers away from doing a night shift is they'll have to probably start at 4 in the morning, and then they would work until say 12 or 1. But on our current premises, they can't do that because the chefs arrive at 6 and they have to vacate the kitchen. So we might have to find, not necessarily a whole setup, but we'll probably have to find, if we did do that, we'd move them to maybe another site where then they would work from 4 a.m. till say 12. But we would never ever do a dark kitchen because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in having a factory or putting some, and even even the bakers don't want to be stuck in some godforsaken place making bread for, there's no love or joy in that. So if we did do that, we would probably put them in another site, which then becomes a retail site as well. And then they could work from 4 a.m.
What would be the beauty? To show everybody how good Establishes is. So it doesn't need to be in Fulham.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be, but we would be it would be around here for sure.
I think the fact that Fulham works quite well in terms of it's sort of quite a nice spread out space, and you've got communities around those sort of hubs. So Wandsbridge Road, you've got that section.
I'm gonna be
Fulham
biased
Road,
because I would love to go to East London and have the quality of the bread, which I know for you is just 3-ingredient bread.
Yes.
And you see it just as it's just an eclair. But I promise you that one of the best red velvets I mentioned today, and there's no joke, anyone that will do it. Or, my mum's favorite forest cake, so it's a lot of memories that I think about coming to you and getting the cakes. So I think, it's a bit on the selfish way. Yes, it's amazing to be in Fulham, but even East London, they've got amazing bakeries.
Yeah.
Haven't had a good red velvet.
We do supply. We can order online from us. At the moment, it's within
That's
a 5
very good to
kilometer.
mention.
Yes, it's within a 5-mile range. So a lot of our stuff is now online through our website. We've invested in that, which is another project, but we've done that finally. So all of our pizzas, our bread, red velvet cake is available to order online.
And also, which Zara will know and I obviously know, but other people might not know, you also do supply to other people, and you've got quite a nice, come on, name drop, Gauri.
Should I tell you the story about the first and our most important wholesale customer who still is our customer? So remember lockdown? I think we've all forgotten lockdown.
Yeah,
but we were open every single day during lockdown. It was the first.
You saved us in that side.
It was 2020, right? In July 2020, I got an email from the head chef of the Wolseley saying that their pastry, whatever, but supplier had gone bust overnight. A lot of businesses went bust during COVID, as we know, because they had other issues. And they were looking for a new supplier, and that one of their chefs lived in our area, and they had been told that our croissants were the best in London, and this would really supply to us. And obviously, they had no idea how small we were at that point. Thank God, right? I hope they don't listen to this podcast, but anyway. And I was like, oh yes, put my banking hat on. Yes, of course. What would you like?
That's what Gauri,
exactly.
You're like, come on, we don't need to allow. You should tap yourself on the back. Your dream was bigger than what you had at that point.
So literally, they said, got it. And they said, okay, so can you bring us some samples? So literally, I put on my best business suit. I got all the samples together. I legged it to the Wolseley. I met with Chris Corbin, who's one of the owners. They take all this very seriously, right? They have this beautiful table set up with tea and everything. They put out all the pastries and they cross-examined each one, cut it into bits, and literally looked at every bit of it.
Wow.
Anyway, and then they said, we'll let you know in a few days. And then I get a phone call about 3 days later saying, great, it's a Thursday. Can you start from Monday? Oh, and by the way, we'll be obviously expecting you to supply to all of our sites.
Oh my
gosh. And then it was like, oh, and we need the delivery at 5 a.m., by the way. So,
I love
we were like, of course, we can do all of that. That's not a problem.
Yeah,
we have our own delivery vehicle. Not. We have our own driver. Not. Right?
Who cares? I'll do it.
Yeah. And so literally, oh my God, we legged it. I got a Zipvan account, got a Zipvan, found a driver, a hook or crook, and the rest is history. So we started off with them. They were the first customers we had, apart from Zara.
I'm not taking pips, I'm not a Wolseley, but wow.
But that's how we got off the ground, because that then meant we could invest in having a driver and having a Zipcar account. And obviously, ever since we have grown our wholesale business, it is heartening to see that they sell our croissants for £5. So anybody goes to the Wolseley and eats a croissant for £5, they can come to Fulham and have it for like half the price. So we're still supplying, and obviously now we have our own electric van, we have our own drivers, and we do have more customers. Most of the wholesale customers have actually found us. We haven't done a very good job of finding them ourselves. We probably should. That's my project, to kind of find more wholesale customers, to be honest. We should. But it's a good balance that we have.
But that's fantastic that they found you and that you didn't have to
and
go
we're still,
out.
it's been 5 years and we're still supplying them.
Yeah, but I will never, ever forget every time somebody will come with somebody they would know, or people will move in the neighbourhood and they will be like, can you imagine this bread's got 3 ingredients?
Yeah.
But, because that's exactly my words. And it's so important.
That's if you count water as an ingredient, by the way.
Well, we don't. Obviously, the
if
most
you don't,
important
it's just
ingredient.
flour and salt.
Exactly.
That's it.
But so for me to be so like, that's what it is. And it's amazing and it's consistent. And, the pain in the bum to have it cut all the time for us when it's been made 2 hours before. But she never said no. She was very honest saying it's not easy, but we will do it. Or if not, they can come to our branch and, have it there cut. But what I wanted, exactly, like Gary said, it's so important to give this. They can go into walking distance into a place to get stuff, like in a quick mood, rather than pop into Tesco's and get the rubbish. Right. There is something that we do with each and one of our lovely guests, which is the on-the-spot question.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. So, shall I go first, or do you want to?
Yeah, no, you look very determined.
Yeah. Only because it's there. No, it's not at all anything scary.
I think it's the on-the-spot question for us as well, because we don't know what to ask. We're just asking.
So, you call yourself a serial entrepreneur?
Not really, but if you insist, I can.
Yeah, I heard you call yourself a serial entrepreneur.
I love that.
Obviously, this is Bridge Baker. This is it. This is sticking. If you had to give, and we know it's hard. It's not easy. If you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who's literally saying, right, I've got this idea, I'm going to start, a similar business, or not similar to you, because we talked about that earlier, but something different, like a small business, want to open up in Fulham, what would be your kind of best piece of advice on reflection that you could give them?
I would say get all the skills you need, assemble a really good team. Don't try and do everything yourself. It's very, even if you've got multi skills and you probably know 80% or 90% of what you want to do, I think having the right people and the right skills around you is essential for success. Whether it's a partner or you employ some really good people, I think trying to do it on your own is fraught. And I think having a head for numbers is very important. It doesn't matter what business you're doing. If you don't have a head for numbers, it's going to be in trouble.
Now my question. You satisfied with that lovely answer?
Yes, always.
I completely agree. I think teamwork makes the dream work. And the fact that you have your head chef from the beginning with you says a lot. But my question is, have you ever thought to be getting to the point to sell Bridge Baker, not to others, but to make it into more like a franchise? Because what I think you should do is have a book. The Bridge Baker book, that's my recipes, that's my home, because I can make it at home if I would want to. If I live in Dorset, if I live in Hampshire, if I live in the Cotswolds, whatever in the world, I can have Gauri's pastry books and, try and do my favorite red velvet rather than come and buy it from you. But again, it comes with that. I don't want to talk about, but we all know the G big brand of bakeries.
Yes.
Do something like that where, you could go in a bigger radius, because I love online and it's convenient, but I'm a person of experience.
Yeah,
the experience of bake, the smell.
I am very hesitant to go down that expansion route. I'll be very honest.
Yeah, no,
because
sure.
I don't think volume and quality can necessarily be combined beyond the point, right? One of the reasons why we have our production on site is because I want to be able to manage it. I want to be able to control it. I want to be able to see what is being made. I'm always eating. I'm always eating and we always testing all the time, because that's my control point. Now, if you want growth, like the way the G's have done, you have to move to a production kitchen somewhere. It's all automated. It's very different. So what I would prefer to do, actually, if I had to think of some amount of growth, is which I'm trying to do now, with, for example, with our head baker, is to perhaps partner with some of the key employees in the business, give them a stake in the business.
Just like Waitrose did.
Yeah,
that's great.
So if we did by the way, I mentioned this, but if we did do a third store, it would be in partnership, because I want to give him a stake in the business. Because I don't want to be running the third store myself, because that's the last thing I want to do right now, is to complicate my life. So the way for growth, because now I feel like I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. It's not about the money. I want to give away something to the team that are working and contributing to the success of the business. So if they can have a stake and they feel that's their own, then that's the way to do it. So if anybody in the business comes forward and says, I want to put in some money, or I want to get, some sort of ownership, that's the way that I would prefer to do it, rather than a franchise or sort of expanding on a sort of, with the back of a production kitchen.
That is amazing. And I think, we already seen what you've done with the two sides. So we are we are 100% positive that the quality and the consistency will be there. So
Hopefully.
regardless, 3 stores, 4 stores, whoever's going to own it, you're still going to be the quality control.
Yes, I'm still going to be eating everything in sight.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
No, but that's what everyone does with cooking, right? With all the best
Yeah.
chefs.
There is a saying, isn't it?
And,
If the chef doesn't taste, it's the food that he made or she made, don't eat it.
Yeah, it's always harder because, exactly.
Oh,
I agree.
that's
Right, well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being here today. And, I think we have covered everything, that people that don't know of Bridge Baker and people that do know of Bridge Baker to be proud of buying from
Thank
you.
you.
People that don't buy, go and buy from the best.
And the behind the scenes story as well,
Exactly.
which is always the
Yes.
bit peeking behind the curtain.
No,
to
and I
see,
think is you're
so.
doing a great job in helping support local, because that's the biggest challenge for us. Honestly, on Fulham Road, that is a challenge because we're surrounded by chains, as you know.
Yeah.
And getting people away from them to come
It's
and buy
just-
local seems to be a much bigger challenge than I had thought.
Yeah, and recent weeks I've really noticed that. I've walked down the other day and I was, what is going on? I
Yeah.
just really fear that I really
You know
hope it's
why?
not going in that
It's
direction.
all about, it's all about the fact that they have a bigger pocket. And when you're a landlord, you want stability. When a small, that's the only thing that it is. They don't really care about anything else, which is sad. But what I believe in is us people and residents. And if we make a fuss, and we are starting making a fuss, and we're just not going to support the big chains, that's the only way. I know it's mean, and I know, we all do it sometimes when we drive on the motorway and the only thing we have is a Starbucks or a Costa or whatever. You feel like, but as much as we can, us locals, to support local and just be true to ourselves. We want you to stay. That's why Fulham Social Hub has come to life.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming.
you.
And
Thank you, Gary.
yes, the last thing that we want to say is obviously our thank you. So Melinda will take that over. But until then, talking about Polo in the Park at Hurlingham, which happens every year. And I think for me, Melinda, the most important day is Sunday, which is Family Day. And bringing some more people together there and getting them to have fun.
So there's a great competition on Instagram, on Fulham
It is.
Social Hub Instagram at the moment. So yes,
Ooh.
head over there if you want a family
It's
ticket.
a full-on family ticket. Just let us know who would you hang out there with, and we will be more than happy to extract you.
So thank you again, Gauri,
You're
and
welcome.
huge thanks to the lovely team at Voxpod here in the heart of Fulham,
Thank
this gorgeous
you.
studio. And massive thanks to our podcast sponsor, Fulham FC Foundation. Without their help, this wouldn't be possible. So
Thank
huge
you,
thanks
thank
to the
you.
team there. Thanks again, Gary.
Thank you
too.
very much. Thank you.